welcome to my show called Icons and Images. This is the poster that we've used for mailing as well as a catalog, and it was assembled through photos of some of my pieces by my son-in-law, Brian Froud, and he is a well-known British illustrator and writer. So I feel very proud to be represented and cared for by my family. More about later as we go through this. This section of the wall is made up of my transferal to stones of things that I've had on my mind, and how the stones are isolated from each other and yet continue to speak at their own speed. And some of the stones still have human forms. I hadn't detached myself totally from that. This is called transformed landscape, and they are in the process of turning to stone. I felt that had happened to me, that I had turned to stone, that if I remained a viable human as I thought I used to be, I would not be able to stand the kind of misery and pain that we were inflicting on everything that we do to ourselves, to each other. And so I thought, I can't keep responding, I've got to retreat somehow. And by retreating into the protective surface of stone, I could still be fully alive and not be affected by outside things. It was a survival technique. And it was one that I tried to transfer and show through the hairpins earlier on. So I moved on to the stones and found out that it was such a satisfying way to express myself that in a way I've never left it. But this is a watercolor drawing, and it has turmoil and mystery and the formation, the beginnings of this transformation. Up above here is a little oil study called Why Stones Conversing. And here you see they're like totem stones almost. They're standing there, the wise stones, in different poses, and they're discussing things. They have plenty of time. They're not limited by our time. They don't have sound bites. They may have stone bites, but they would take thousands and thousands of years to express themselves, maybe, or to be understood. But again, there's no rush. The one below it is an oil study again, and this is called Slain Stones. I did these forms, and as I did them, I could see they began to look like something that had been cut into segments and had fallen. But I had great interest and pleasure in painting these shapes. I had been teaching old master techniques to my beginning oil painting students, and found it was a very satisfying way to paint things. I could get glazes and create conditions that ordinary direct painting couldn't do for me. And again, because the technique took time, it went with the rocks very well. They needed time, so I had the time to give to. Over the years, I acquired special kinds of stones. I've always loved to pick up stones. Every summer, I've come up north from the time I was born and come to East Jordan and stayed at my great-grandparents' home. When we were older, we would take rides to Lake Michigan, go to Charlevoix, and go to Fisherman's Island. It wasn't called that then, it just was to the beach, the big lake. And there were wonderful stones, and every time we go, the shore was different because the action of the water and the wind would change things. And that was a lesson in itself, to discover that things happen whether or not you know about it or you direct them, because you don't. You accept what's given to you. And some of these stones were given to me. Most of them are fragments of other civilizations. This is a fragment that was given to me. The fragment itself is probably no more than 2 inches at the widest part, but I've enlarged everything because they played a large part in my thinking. And this one up above it is a fragment. Here it is again over here. It's a fragment that Wendy and I found on the beach one winter holiday from her school. We went to Nassau. Neither one of us had ever traveled there before. Water couldn't get away, so Wendy and I went. And we were only there about a week. But they had a violent storm. And the next morning we walked on the beach and found a lot of dead sea life. But among the things that didn't live or die was this little piece up here. And you'll see it again later on. There's a larger painting of it. But it looked as if it were a fragment from a wall or a floor. It wasn't, it was not tile as such. They weren't really inlaid parts, and they were embedded into some kind of cement or stone. I'd never seen anything quite like it before. But because it was cast up by the sea, first of all, we laughed at each other and said, oh, it's from Atlantis. So Atlantis was over in this area, closer. And then I just realized after the tsunami that more likely it actually was from a Mayan ruin. Or there are lots of Middle American countries that had magnificent ruins, and it could very well have been from something there. I don't know, but it has, to me, great fascination and great power. So it gets featured in a lot of these things. These two stones, this one with the hole and the other kind of ruffled one up there, also play roles all the way through. The beast, the reddish beast, and the water signify the remarkable fragment that I found, because I think it suggests the back end, the foot and the tail, the haunch of a jaguar. So it would fit with that kind of countryside. This one is a landscape that I did in, it says 2002, but that's not right. I did this one a long time ago. I should change that. Anyway, it was a desolate kind of landscape. I've never been to the fjords, but I've seen lots of pictures and read lots of novels. So I painted my own, and I did it by a setting sun or a rising moon. Who knows what it is, but it's pretty bleak. And again, as I said, it's isolated. And this, I think, was a forerunner of working with these stones. Actually, it came around the same period. I would say maybe a little earlier. But I had always liked doing that sort of landscape. This is an oil painting. Again, started as a study. And you'll find things that I hope you'll be familiar with by the time we're at the end of this wall. Here are the two stones again that you find over there. And here's the seashell with the little barnacles or whatever they are on it. And it was a challenge. Again, I was teaching the old master technique. So it was interesting. It was a challenge for me to do these studies and using those techniques of glazes and underpaintings. And I tried to capture a reality that shows the layers of stones. This is a painting that's not for sale because it plays an important part in my living room. And I like to remember this journey. It was on one of our trips to Greece, and we took a cruise and visited Greek islands, and then we went to Ephesus and visited the ancient town and saw some of the renovations that have been done by different countries' schools of antiquities. And they all had a chance to do some restoration. Some of it was quite bizarre, and others were more to the point serious. But we got off, our bus stopped back in here someplace. And this used to be a seaport, but over the millennia the sands filled it in, so the water is far back, you don't even see it anymore. But we walked up this way, and this is the holy way. Most all of these ancient cities had what was called a holy way, and it went past different temples to different gods and goddesses. And this one would come through here, down through here. This was an old auditorium, kind of a pit, amphitheater, and we'd walk through here and down through here. But the sky was kind of a mud color. It didn't know whether it wanted to rain or what. And I felt a very, very strange presence all the time, visiting all of these things, of the powers that existed before any of the Greek temples did. After all, the people were praying or propitiating a series of different gods and goddesses or figures or beasts or beings. And there seemed to be that presence. It was a very heavy feeling. So I called this painting Ephesus as seen through the underbelly of a mythical beast. And here's the mythical beast, one leg, the underbelly, the back leg. And this is hanging over. It's another dimension. It's totally flat. It's not on the same dimension at all as the ruins, which were very solid. And again, in the background, I've reintroduced the shapes and defining certain sections. Perhaps here's the head of the imaginary beast that I have named the jaguar, and other shells tossed in, and again, I'm using the old master technique, which I find a wonderful way to paint. And more stones. These are called power stones. And here are the two, especially magic stones. They're not that large. I keep thinking I'll just reach over here and show them to you, but I'm not at home, so they're not behind me. Anyway, here they are laid out, and they're all kind of emanating a blue glow around them. And then here are intense sources of light that are setting them apart and making them as special as they are, to me at least. These are power objects. And here again, I found a wonderful stick and painted it as a magical walking stick. That's two different views of it. Fish spine, regular shell, part of a chicken bone, the neck bone, or the spine. Another view of that, wishbone, clay beads, shells, pearls. All of these things are natural objects. Here are my two favorite stones again. The ones that are here, the ones that are over there. And here they are again. So they play prominent roles. And here I've set them all on earthy colors, kind of basic native patterns, shapes, colors, because to me they're ancient things. They have ancient powers to them. And this is a landscape. I have a counterbalance with the other one, but this was done later, after I'd read Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. And it impressed me so much, and I've had a love affair with the earth since I discovered that it's older and very durable and trustworthy. And when I found out what we were doing to it, some people doing it inadvertently and other people knowing full well what they were doing, I painted this kind of dismal picture of a dying sun and absolutely unfertile land and all the strata of things that the earth has gone through to get to this point of isolation and dead stuff. So that's kind of a gloomy thing, but I wanted it to be strong. All the strata of things that the earth has gone through to get to this point of isolation and dead stuff. So that's kind of a gloomy thing, but I wanted it to be strong. More beasts. These are beasts on a red background. and that's oil on prepared paper. When I started doing the beast, the magical beast that was on that fragment that I found, it led me into more beasts. And again, these are all beasts that have their own languages, that talk to each other and suffer the slings and arrows. This is a wounded beast. And here are heart wounds, head wounds, and it's in a mythical, strange landscape. And down below, this is a mourning victor. And here this beast has killed this one, and yet it's crying up to the moon that it's killed, who knows, maybe it loved that one, I don't know, but anyway, that's what happened. Then I did a series of fun things. I've always loved bones, and I used them as examples for my classes when I was teaching drawing. In fact, our school was well known for doing things like that with bones. We used all kinds of bones at school for basic drawing because the forms were so beautiful and they're functional. But so every time we'd have a chicken or a turkey, I would boil it up, and we not only had a lot of soup, but I had beautiful bones left over. I had boxes filled with them. So one time I got them out when I was up here, in fact, 2 years ago, and started playing around with them and thought, wow, I could make these nice little things. So I decided I would make specimen insects out of the chicken bones. And I covered some blocks of wood with linen fabric and treated these like real mounted specimens. So this one is a simple chicken moth, and that uses elements of the bones. Here is a wishful chicken spider, and the legs are all made with wishbones. Wasn't it handy that they have 8? And this is a Luna chicken moth, and I've used these bones to do the exaggerated wing structure of the Luna moth a little bit. Anyway, they were lots of fun to make, and that was kind of a departure, but not that much of one if you followed the other segments with bones and shapes. This was an owl fetish that I did in '85, and that was made from the part of a lobster's claw, and these were the parts of the turkey. And these are again from the backbone, or the spinal cord. The cord runs right through those holes. And it's mounted on linen and made primitive by all of these things, fringing it and putting beads and buttons on. So that became the owl fetish. It's a good luck one. Over the years, it seems that I've made boxes that have taken on temple shapes. I didn't start out knowing I would do this, but that's what evolved. And the 2 temples, this one and the one on the other side of the painting that you may have noticed as I walked by, were done within the same 2 or 3 year period, but done for different reasons. This one was done because my daughter and son-in-law brought me a block of Chinese tea, and that's what this is. It's a block of tea that travelers would take and break off, and on their travels they could have a cup of tea whenever they needed to. But it was so beautifully presented, it's embossed on both sides, so I knew that I would like to show both sides. And I could not put a hinge in it because it would crumble. So first of all, I lacquered it well on both sides to keep it from self-destruction. Then I built a wooden frame around it, but not thick enough to actually hinge it. There's a lot of weight. So I knew a hinge wouldn't work. Therefore, it called for a sliding door. And I developed the sliding door as a solution to it, because then when it was open you could see the back embossed part. The 2 boxes that became part of the temple were empty boxes, wood boxes of Twining's tea, and I covered them with black fabric and lacquered them. I had a sister living in San Francisco at the time, and I would visit her once a year, and she would take me to Chinatown, among other interesting places, and I would always buy cinnabar bits. So these are little decorative cinnabar elements, and the brass fittings, which were obviously very typical Oriental, and the little carved things. The rest of the pieces were found. These were curtain sliders, and these little bits came from a neighbor's leftover bits when he was making a case for his guns and knives, which he collected. So he was very happy to let me have those rather than throw them out. The color scheme was indicated by the cinnabar, and I wanted the black to unify everything because the T-block was black. And the brass then became the third element. So it's pretty tied together by these simple visual color means. The door slides open, and inside is this rather strange thing. It's called Spence's Teabag Temple. I had a wonderful student named Dayton Spence, and he was a Vietnam veteran. And he ended up following directions, but in a very unique way. If we were doing drawings, he would do his with masking tape and lay it on the floor on big pieces of paper and draw the subject matter that we were talking about, but they would be done with tape. And that was a very innovative way. He also did self-portraits of things from his past. He was with the Air Corps camouflage unit, and here we have his self-portraits and those of planes too. I bought these from him. He was selling them for very little money, just to raise enough money for paint. And so I bought a lot of them. I really liked them, and I had them pinned up on my wall. When we moved up here, they were beginning to fray, so I thought they need to be saved. I built a little container so it could show both sides. But then I had the problem of, okay, good, now what do? I have to hang it so it will revolve. Then Walter was given a box of Armagnac from our kids, the duty-free shop. He loved Armagnac, and this box had a hole in it where the neck of the bottle went through. So I got the box, and this then became a perfect solution. So the whole box started with this, which came at one time, me putting this together in the frame, which I did at another period, and getting the tea boxes. It all came together. I lined all of the boxes with grass cloth and made a sequence here. Again, the doors opening on opposite sides to move you around a little bit. This became the Teabag Temple. And up here in this little shelf are two beautifully made ceramic men. And that was a gift to my sister too, who found them in Chinatown. And they're exquisitely put together. But they became the spinners of fate. So they have a long red string in their hands. And that's determining Spence's fate, as well as tea leaves in a little porcelain cup. And there were rose petals down below, which had fallen off. There's a little scroll up on this side that has Spence's name, and they're his tea bags. So that was the beginning of that. This is the next stage. This is the contemplative stage, where you go in and walk down. And remember, when you're in here, you're only about this big. So you're contemplating the landscape. You get to the upper level. If you make it this high, here are two gods of wisdom, and they have pearls on the top of their heads, so they dispense their pearls of wisdom to you. And that was Spence's Teabag Temple. This is the Ode to Alexander box, and I've used, in a way, the same color scheme. However, this is a little deeper reddish tone. Again, these great columns that might have supported a wedding cake had I not bought them first. I've mixed my periods up a little bit. We've got the Doric and the Corinthian, which were thousands of years apart, but that's all right. In my mythology, it all fits. This is called the Alexander box, or Ode to Alexander, because I was given, slide this way, I was given a little bust little bronze bust of a Greek warrior. So I immediately thought, oh, it's Alexander. I didn't know who it was originally, but it's Alexander now. So I mounted him on a little pedestal and faux marbleized the little block that the head is resting on. And I had a wonderful roll of copper material, so I lined it with that, and that again kind of suggested this color. So this is the inner temple. There is a little emblem behind of an Alexandrian coin. And this wonderful relief here came from the Rainbow Shop in Charlevoix. That is a kind of a resale shop. And I don't know what it was off of originally. It was just there. So I bought it and kept it for years, and finally I found a place. This little thin bas-relief is really beautiful. Old one, at least it was acquired thinking it was old, and that was a gift to me as well. And that opens up, and inside is a little shrine to Alexander. One of the difficulties when you make boxes like this is if you don't think far enough ahead, you run into problems, and this was a case in point. Because of the overhang here, which I really needed for architectural balance, I discovered after I got it all put together I couldn't open the door any higher than this, so you have to crawl underneath it, but then you're small, so you can do that and you can see everything. I painted a chess piece as a Greek base, and with a one-haired brush tried to paint little Greek figures going around it. From a distance it looks pretty effective, I think. And the same chess set yielded these terrific